Have you ever watched someone lose everything and somehow come back stronger than before? Not just recovered, but clearer, calmer, almost as if something inside them had finally clicked into place. It's a strange thing to witness, because when most people imagine losing everything, they picture an ending. But for some, it quietly becomes a beginning. There was a man named Caleb Turner. Caleb lived in a modest apartment just outside Austin, Texas. For years, his life had followed what most would call a smart path. He studied business, landed a stable job at a growing tech company, and slowly worked his way up into a comfortable management position. On the surface, everything looked right. Good salary, predictable routine, a future that seemed secure. But if you looked a little closer, there was always something missing. Caleb was always tired, not physically, but mentally. He spent his days in meetings that felt repetitive, solving problems he didn't care about, chasing targets that never seemed to bring real satisfaction. Still, he told himself the same thing many people do. This is what success looks like. So he stayed. Years passed quietly like that, until one day, everything changed. The company he worked for announced a sudden restructuring. At first, Caleb didn't think much of it. He had been there long enough. He had proven himself. He assumed he was safe. But a week later, he was called into a small conference room. The conversation was short, polite, professional, and final. His position was being eliminated. Just like that, the structure he had built his life around disappeared. At first, Caleb tried to stay calm. He told himself it was temporary. He updated his resume, reached out to contacts, applied for new positions, but days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and the responses never came the way he expected. Rejections, silence, or worse, polite emails that said nothing at all. Slowly, something inside him began to shift. The confidence he once carried started to fade. Doubt took its place. He began to question everything: his abilities, his choices, even his identity. Because for so long, his sense of self had been tied to what he did. And now, that was gone. Savings started to shrink. His routine disappeared. The days began to blur together. There were mornings when he would sit at the edge of his bed, staring at the floor, wondering how everything had unraveled so quickly. It felt like he had lost more than a job. It felt like he had lost direction. And for a while, he resisted it. He kept trying to rebuild the same life he had before, sending out applications, chasing the same kind of roles, hoping things would go back to normal. But nothing worked. And that's when something unexpected happened. One evening, as the sun was setting over the quiet streets of his neighborhood, Caleb decided to go for a walk. Not with a purpose, not to clear his mind, just to move. As he walked, he noticed something he hadn't paid attention to in years. The way the light hit the trees, the sound of distant conversations, the simple rhythm of his own footsteps. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't rushing toward anything. He was just there. That night, he returned home and sat in silence. No emails, no job applications, just his thoughts. And in that quiet, a realization slowly began to surface. For years, he hadn't actually been choosing his life. He had been following a path that made sense on paper, but not one that felt meaningful to him. Losing his job hadn't created that emptiness. It had only revealed it. That realization was uncomfortable, but it was also honest. And for the first time, Caleb stopped trying to escape the feeling. Instead, he leaned into it. The next morning, He didn't open his laptop right away. He made coffee, sat by the window, and asked himself a simple question he had never seriously considered before. If I wasn't trying to impress anyone, what would I actually want to do? At first, there was no clear answer, but over the next few days, small ideas began to surface. He remembered how much he used to enjoy writing, not for work, not for results, just for the process itself. So he started small. A few paragraphs each morning, no pressure, no expectations, just writing. Days turned into weeks again. But this time, something felt different. There was no immediate success, no recognition. But there was a quiet sense of clarity growing inside him. He began to understand something he had never fully realized before. When everything is taken away, you are left with only what truly belongs to you: your thoughts, your values, your choices. And while that can feel terrifying at first, it can also be incredibly freeing, because for the first time, there's nothing left to pretend, no role to maintain, no image to protect, just you. Caleb started to notice that his days, though simpler, felt more intentional. He wasn't chasing approval anymore. He wasn't trying to meet expectations that didn't feel like his own. He was simply building something from the ground up, something honest. Eventually, he began sharing his writing online. At first, almost no one read it, but that didn't stop him, because for the first time in years, he wasn't measuring his progress by external results. He was measuring it by how aligned he felt with what he was doing. And slowly, something began to shift again. A small audience started to grow. People who connected with his words, people who felt seen through the stories he shared. Opportunities followed, but differently this time. Not because he chased them, but because he had become someone who created value in his own way. Looking back, Caleb realized something that would have been impossible for him to understand before. Losing everything hadn't set him back. It had stripped away everything that wasn't truly his. And in that space, he had found something real. You see, some people grow faster after losing everything, not because loss is easy, but because loss removes the illusions. It forces you to confront what you've been avoiding. It takes away the safety nets that keep you comfortable, but stuck. And when those things disappear, you are left with a choice. You can spend your energy trying to rebuild what you had, or you can take a step back and ask whether what you had was ever what you truly wanted. Growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from clarity. And sometimes, clarity only appears when everything else is gone. Caleb didn't become successful overnight. His journey was still uncertain, but he became something more important. He became honest with himself. And from that place, everything else started to grow naturally. So, if you're going through a season where it feels like everything is falling apart, take a moment to pause, not to panic, not to rush, but to listen, because sometimes life isn't taking things away from you. It's making space for something you've never given yourself the chance to discover. And that space, uncomfortable as it may feel, might be exactly where your real growth begins. If this story resonated with you, take a second to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories that help you see life a little more clearly, don't forget to subscribe to Life Lessons. Thank you for being here, and I wish you clarity, strength, and the courage to grow through whatever you're facing.